everybody. Welcome to this episode of Transplant Talks. I'm Rachel Davis, psychiatrist, living liver donor, and mentor for the American Transplant Foundation. And I'm here with my co-host, Anastasia Henry.
Hello.
And I'm going to let Anastasia introduce our guests, actually.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And it is such a pleasure to introduce. I feel like I'm introducing not just our guests today, but my family members. Because boy, oh boy, we have some stories to tell.
Oh
Stories of
boy.
perseverance, stories of uncontrollable laughter, and just keep going no matter what. And our guests today, Rachel, they're such warriors. I have to say they're American Transplant Foundation warriors. Steve Kreider and his beautiful daughter, Kelsey, they got involved with American Transplant Foundation back in 2007.
Not nine or seven,
2000.
eight. Yep.
Yes, it's been many, many, many years. And Steve has been incredible volunteer for us, mentor. He has been a recipient of our services, and we work with him in many different capacities. And Kelsey also has been very involved with us over the years, and she also worked as our intern.
Yep, I did back in the day.
Well, lots of connections.
That's true.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to hear your story. And I think, yeah, why don't you start out by just telling us your story? Kelsey, do you want to start?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could start at the very beginning. In 2007, I was diagnosed with a medullary cystic kidney disease, so MCKD. And we sort of stumbled upon it because I was just going off to college, and my mom, before she wanted me to leave and the house, she's like, we need to make sure you're healthy enough to go away, get away from me. So we did blood panels and blood work and saw my doctor. And then in my lab work, they just noticed some things were not correct. They noticed my levels were not right. And this was in Boulder, at Boulder Community Hospital. And so they did more repeat testing. And then they decided, since I was still 17 at the time, to send me off to Children's Hospital to get more testing done to see what was going on. So my mom and I went there and got testing done at Children's in 2007, just right after I graduated high school. And they saw, with all those testing, there was a kidney doctor that came in, and he came in and told me and my mom that I was in kidney failure because my creatinine was super high. It was probably like above 10. And for if general population, if no one understands, a normal person's creatinine is between like 0.5 and 1 generally. So mine was above 10. So I was functioning at like 10 to 12, like 12%. So they just sort of gave us the lowdown of the next steps of going on dialysis, and you need to get a transplant. And so we started on that road of getting myself in dialysis, and then figuring out the whole transplant process and how that worked as well.
Can I jump in and ask a question really quick? I'm just
Yeah.
curious, with a creatinine of 10, like, did you feel bad? Like, did you know something was wrong?
So, no, actually, that's the weirdest thing, is that I was just extremely tired. I mean, when you're a teenager and you're growing, you don't really see, you think like, oh, they're just tired. That's a normal teenager behavior. But the doctor said my body just grew with it. It just grew with my kidney function failing slowly over time, that I never was aware of it. I guess looking back on it now, I was very fatigued and tired, I guess more than the average teenager. And then I was extremely skinny, like tiny, because when you have you lose your appetite. So those were like the two biggest signs looking back at it now. But in the moment in time, no, we honestly, as a family, we didn't really know that this was a thing, like anything was going wrong.
Wow.
Yeah.
So quite the shock.
Yeah. Quite the shock. But our family's pretty strong and resilient. So we moved forward with it and figured out what our next steps were to get myself transplanted. And that's when my dad, he got tested. for it he was my first donor in
So
this whole process.
before we go there, did you end up having to go on dialysis for some time?
Yes, I did.
What was that
Oh,
like?
oh, I mean, dialysis is never fun. It's actually it's never a fun thing to do. I did what's called hemodialysis, and where you do that in center, where you get hooked up to a machine 3 days a week, and they run your blood through it's a dialyzer, and basically that it's cleaning it. It's your artificial kidney, and then it goes back into your body. And depending on your body size, that depends on how long you are on the machine for, and also if there's a lot of other factors. But since for me in particular, I'm such a small person, I still had a little bit called residual function, meaning my kidney still had some working with it, so I could still use the restroom, like go to the bathroom, but they really want you to make sure they remove your fluid, clean your blood. That's what dialysis is. And so I was on the machine for about 3.5 hours for 3 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kelsey, at the time, were you still in high school?
I just graduated, actually. I was all set to go off to college. I was going to go to Durango down in, oh my gosh, the college just escaped.
Fort Lewis? Fort Lewis?
Yes, Fort Lewis. Thank you. I'm like, oh my gosh, that just escaped my brain. But yes, I was going to go to Fort Lewis College in Durango and, start my, living my life. And when you graduate high school. So, but that didn't happen. I had to put a stop on all of that and take care of my health and we had to disenroll from myself. We thought I could still go down there, but with how everything turned out, I did community college, and then I went on to going to Metro State here in Denver. So everything worked out for the better, but still, a big change in my life at age, I was just turning 18.
Well, and thank goodness your mom was on top of it enough to say, let's get your health checked out before we send you away.
Yeah, she was like, there's no way I'm letting you leave this house unless we know you're healthy enough to leave. And that was a very good thing she did. So I give a lot of props for her, for that.
As a fellow parent, I need to put it on my calendar, like in 9 years, make sure that they check my daughter out before she goes to college, right?
Make sure she's good all the time.
Yes. And I think it speaks so highly of your family perseverance. Like, okay, we had a plan A, and now we have this major change. We have a life-threatening condition of our beautiful daughter. Guess what? We're not just gonna quit. We're gonna move forward. We're gonna get enrolled in a community college, gonna go with this dialysis treatments. And in the meantime, look for a living donor. And this is where we need to bring Steve, because he was one of your first living donors, but not the last.
Yep, he was my first one. So like as we were getting, he was getting tested. And like I said, my mom and I, like when we first found out, I think this is very important to touch on. When my mom and I first found out, we looked at each other. My mom looked at me to see my reaction because I'm 18 and, she wanted to see, but I looked at her. I'm like, well, what's the next step? Like, what do we have to do? I don't know. I didn't really think about in that moment of processing the emotion behind it. I was just trying to figure out what do we have to do? So, yeah. And then that turned into my dad, and he was getting tested, got tested it for me, and he was a perfect match on paper, but then complications happened, but he can share his side of that of getting
I'm
tested.
curious, Steve, before you share your side, what did they tell you about finding a living donor versus a deceased donor, pros and cons? Or
Yeah, I mean, there's always pros in donation, right? There's pros in deceased and in living. So I think that's the bottom line, is donation is a good thing. Even if you pass away, you should become a donor. When it comes to what I've known is that living donation, the kidneys last because it's coming from a living person. It's lasting longer than a deceased donor is. So it's usually better to try to get a living donor for whoever, for a kidney patient.
so your family got tested, and
yes. Yeah. So my dad did. My mom was more being my caregiver. So she was like, I need to take care of her. And then my dad got tested, but we understood as well when they first started initiating the process, like you have to have at that time period, times have changed since 2007, but in order to be a donor in 2007, you had to have the same blood type. And my dad and I did. And so that's why he got tested to be my donor. My mom did not have my same blood type. So that's why she also stayed and became my caregiver.
Got it.
Yeah.
So Steve, do you want to jump in? Tell us what the testing process was like and what it was like to be a dad with a daughter who needed a kidney?
Well, from the very beginning, as Kelsey explained, it came as a shock to me. I got a phone call from Deb, and they hit me on like in the side of the head, and I didn't really comprehend it. I was kind of in a quick state of denial, like there's no way this kid's been living with me and her mom for 17, 18 years, and I didn't understand what the whole process was all about, and I didn't understand kidney failure, and I was just kind of oblivious and uninformed, uneducated about it. So there was a learning curve, as Kelsey mentioned, that I had to come up to speed pretty quick on. But the emotions as a parent were pretty intense. I just, it hit me really hard. And quite frankly, I didn't know the ATF existed because they have a good education program now where they educate, the potential recipient and the potential living donor. The recipient's already existing, but they have a great education process and they have a great mentoring process. For someone like me, I could have really used that because I was just sideways. I was in corporate America and traveling all the time, and life was great, and living the Colorado dream, skiing and all of that, and had Kelsey going off to college. So it was really a kind of a complete 180 turnaround. So we went in and met with the docs at UCH. We transferred from Children's to UCH pretty quickly, and we met with the docs and the coordinators, and they said, "Hey, you can either try to find a living donor through the process of getting on a list." And I said, "Okay, how long's the list?" And they said, "It's probably about 5 to 8 years." I'm like, "No, we're not doing that." So I just jumped in and immediately, as the dad, went through the process, which it wasn't easy. It wasn't, it took a few months longer than I thought it would, but actually we got from, A to Z in about 4 months. So she was only on dialysis, that I recall, about 2 months before we actually did the transplant on October 31st, I think Halloween in 2007. And so we thought everything was great, perfect match on paper, as Kelsey said. And then for some reason, within the 30 to 45 days, as I recall, the first 60 days, she started having some rejection issues. Her antibody counts went up, and the docs down at UCH were kind of, medically, they kind of figured out what was going on. And I was kept informed, but I was still recovering. So I was just kind of on the recovery side still. And we got the bad news. And from there, our odyssey really, really started from there.
Well, and how was that emotionally? I mean, talk about you've done everything you can to help your daughter, and then you find out that the kidney's being rejected.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it was the hardest day of my life when I found out, to be honest. It's the hardest day. There was only one other day in my life that was harder, and that was another situation with my other daughter. But when I found out, it was pretty devastating, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. But after I processed it and got through it, then I decided, now my mission in life is going to be to find someone else that would be the perfect match and to, help save her life. And that's when I just my whole life changed, and I decided I have to have a mission now, and this is my new mission. So
He's really good at it too, because he's a salesman, so he's really good at pushing, getting the word out of living donations. So he's really good at that part of it all.
He's amazing. Kelsey,
Yeah.
as you recall, you had such high expectations, like, okay, this is going to be hard, but we'll get through it. We'll get through the surgery and I will move on with my life. And then you got good medical team, everything seems to be in place. And then you had that terrible news that your dad's kidney is just not going to be a part of your body and it's just being rejected. Like, how did you feel, like being so young, like you were just like turned 18? How did you feel?
I mean, at that age, it's sort of also you're growing as well, like emotionally, and you're trying to find your place and like what your next steps are after high school, like any normal person. And so to find out like I wasn't being able to keep that kidney, that I rejected it because my immune system was so good, like such a great immune system that my doctors just could not keep ahead of it. They did everything they could. And within the span of a month, I was in and out of the hospital for a month. I lost it. So it's a very hard thing to comprehend when you're that young, to know that you can't hold on to something, like your body isn't capable of accepting it, I guess. And it's hard to think of, maybe it's something like within my fault in a way, like why can't my body be keeping it? um it's hard rationalizing and understanding it at such a young age, of knowing what it all means, because like everyone, like the story is like you're gonna go on dialysis, but when you get that kidney, it's gonna be great, it's gonna last. It's just, I at that point in time, with education and things, no one said the aftermath of like, well, there could be complications, things could happen. And so it's sort of a learn as you go and experience it as you go. And so it's just it was very hard to comprehend and to understand at the time. But I've always had the resilient kind of personality where I just could not let that stop me in my tracks. Like I just had to keep pushing forward. Like I just didn't want to like let things stop.
And if our listeners thinking, well, what did they do? So they got the second kidney and that was happily ever after, right?
No.
Well, before we go there, I have a psychiatrist question.
Yes.
I mean, it struck me as you were talking, as I could tell you were like thinking about it as if you had possibly done something wrong. And I'm curious, was there a point that you realized that no, actually you weren't doing anything wrong at all? This is just part of what can happen? How long did it take to get to that point, if you did?
I think I think that's an ongoing thing, to be honest. I think because I'm so sorry. You hear
That's okay. No worries.
um it's like an ongoing thing, I think. I mean, realistically, yes, I can logically and realistically understand, no, this is not my fault. I didn't do anything. But it's on the emotional side of it all, it's hard to know, like it's hard to say, like, why can't my body be doing this? Like, why can't it be like a normal person? And that's like the biggest pill to swallow, is like, I wish I could be like any normal human being, where I didn't have to think of all these things, and then wanting this my body to accept this kidney so much, and it didn't work out. It's just the emotion part of it is say it's a hard thing to swallow, I guess.
Well, and I'm guessing, Dad, you probably also had similar feelings too, right? Like, was there something wrong with my kidney, or did you blame yourself, or did you not go down that path?
Oh no, I went down that path. Yeah, I had a lot of 3 o'clock in the mornings, to be
Yeah.
honest. So what I did is I tried to just use the usual male analytical side of myself versus the emotional side after being devastated and going through that, grieving process for probably a week or two, and said, okay, well, I went and studied as much as I could. I went and got on the internet and I studied. I went to John Hopkins. I went to all these different places to study about antibodies and matching and types and all of that. And what could I do to what happened? And they explained to me that it wasn't anyone's fault. It's just her body and her immune system is stronger than your kidney is. And that's when I got invested with the American Transplant Foundation and with trying to figure out, okay, now I've got to find a lead donor for my kid, or she's not going to make it, right? Or be on dialysis. And that's not acceptable. So that's how I coped, I guess you call it.
So you didn't have long to grieve before you had to jump right into action.
I had to jump right back in. Right, right. And so we went out, we did a lot of media work, a lot of internet, emails. I put together an email list. I was kind of working, on my own to kind of figure this all out. No one was there to mentor me, as I had mentioned earlier. So I had to just kind of use my marketing and my sales skills and my persistence and my energy to go out and where can I go? And so I figured out, well, I'll go to the newspaper and I'll get a story in the newspaper and I'll talk to my alumni association and I'll talk to anybody that will listen to me and I'll put an internet email out to 100 people on my list and ask them to send our story to 10 of their people. So that instead of hitting 100, it would hit 1,000. Um, and, sure, so and behold, someone from my alumni association for college heard about it and they decided to step up. And sadly, we went through the same process.
Yeah.
He donated, was in the hospital for a week, 30, 60, 45 days later, whatever, same process. The immune system was too strong, which again was, devastating, probably more so for Kelsey at the time, because I had already gone through the process myself. And then it was on to our odyssey of, many, many more years of repeating the process, two more times.
Yeah, and I think like to touch on, I think it's always been, we're always in, at least for me, I think my mom as well, because my mom and I were very much together in on this because she was my caregiver. I think we were always in survival mode and like what we need to do to survive, get where we need to get to. I don't know if there was a lot of also processing in between things. I think it was just what do we need to do and how we can make sure that I can have a living, like a kidney, because being on dialysis was not the best option, but we have to do it because you need a kidney, an artificial kidney. But it's just, we were just always in, let's go, let's figure it out, what's the next steps, basically survival mode. And then, like my dad was saying, we had my first transplant October 31st, and then May of 2008 was my second one. And that failed again within the same month because of my immune system. And the doctors couldn't keep ahead of it at university, like before. Same grade on paper. So just
That
another
point,
thing.
Kelsey.
Yeah.
So when the second kidney from the second living donor failed, were you were you scared? You're like, okay, like maybe I don't know what to do, or like what were your doctors saying? Like we just need to find the right donor, or at that point nobody knew what will happen.
I think I think it's like, well, let's take a pause for a minute and let's return to dialysis, and we need to figure out what the next steps are. The doctors were never like, what's going on? Why can't we do this? They were always very hopeful and very positive and very supportive. And they also mentioned maybe we should go out to, instead of being at university, maybe you guys should go look at other hospitals that had, um, programs or, studies, things trials that I could be a part of. And so that was our next step. That's what we did for the third transplant. We researched with our team, and my dad probably was a part of it too. We researched and trying to find my mom was probably involved too. It's so long, 2008. But we research and try to figure out what can we do and what can we be a part of so the next kidney can last not a month. They can last longer than that. And that's how we ended up in our third transplant, which is in 2009, like a year later in 2009. And we went to Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, Rochester, Minnesota. And they had a trial there that I could be a part of that had about immune systems and rejection and things like that. So that's where we started with the third. But also before we did my third one, we had to get a donor and living donation and all of that as well. And that's where we found our third donor. With my dad was telling about how he got in touch with newspapers, people like that. So that's how we found our third donor.
It was someone who didn't know you who just happened to see the story.
It was in the Louisville, right, Dad? Was it the Louisville
It was a daily camera, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
daily
What
camera.
Huh.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
what occurred is I had stories on the news also. TVs did some stories, and we had Denver Post, the camera, Louisville. I mean, all of the surrounding stories. I just, I would call the news editors and the uh, papers and just, here's our story. You got to help us out here. And most of them were very sympathetic, and we just positioned it like, this 18, 19-year-old girl is not going to make it unless we find a living donor. And here's how we can do this. And again, there was no direction. It was just kind of winging it as we went. And her third donor, Kay.
Her daughter was in the same, my third donor was in the medical field as well, so she kind of
Right.
understood it, and her daughter was in the same.
What
um
was her name?
her name was Kelly.
Kelly. So Kay basically stepped up and got in touch with me and said she wanted to go through the process. She saw the articles in the paper and reached out to me, and I directed her to the UCH Living Donor Coordinator, and they tested her, and she basically said, "I have a daughter, Kay, who's the same age as Kelsey, 19." And I thought if I was going through this and Kelly was going through this, I would want to be able to help her. And then she ended up being a perfect match also. It was just amazing that this lady who had no idea who we were except from the paper would reach out and do this. And as I've been through this process now, I found out that's what you got to do. You just got to get the word out to 10 zillion people. And out of the 10 zillion, there's going to be 4 or 5 that will have that calling, if I call it, a calling to save someone else's life and become a hero, a living donor hero. And Kay was it at that moment.
Yeah, she got a lot of testing done at Mayo Clinic, because that's where we had it, was at Mayo. So she did testing, and we got things sent up to them. So and we had our third transplant at Mayo Clinic.
And then what happened?
And then actually this time around, my kidney lasted for 5 years. This one lasted so it was great. It lasted for 5 years. They figured, and the thing is, I didn't have to be a part of that trial. Actually, the doctors and everything were saying that with the right medication, it's hard to know the details of it because that was in 2009, but it worked out where I didn't have to be part of that trial. It was there if I needed to be, but I didn't have to do that. And we were out there for probably like a month in Minnesota, going to doctor visits, making sure everything was okay. And it eventually worked out, and I got to go to college and transfer into Metro State and work on my degree. So and I got to experience living as a 20 in my 20s, away from my parents. That was pretty amazing. So I got to experience somewhat of a normal life of being in my early 20s.
And I remember, so I started at the foundation in 2011, and very quickly I met with Steve, and I felt like he was interviewing me. I was like, wow, I thought I already done with all my interviews, and Steve was interviewing, like, who are you? What are you doing here? But once I passed the test, we became a family, and it was so special for Kay. You always call her Special K. And my dad and all of us just have dinner, and it was
Right.
just such beautiful time of this hope. And my dad, to this day, he's like, how's my buddy Steve, right? How's his beautiful daughter? What's going on? And yeah, it was just like one of those stories that, and we thought that this is it, like you've done it, you've done it. Kelsey is set for life, well, like set for the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally, it felt like at the moment, felt like, you know what, it was all meant to be, right? Like Special K, like everybody just like it all came together, and those were like really happy times. So, and
Mm-hmm.
this was the time when Steve got involved with us, with the American Transplant Foundation. Everything that he has learned on the journey to that point, we were starting our mentorship program. He jumped in. He helped us to develop the vision for the program, and he said, "Wow, I can be a mentor so other people don't have to like figure it out like from level zero. So Steve, we do a lot at the foundation. What program is your favorite? What program do you think has the most impact?
Well, program wise, the living donor side of it obviously is where I kind of wanted to focus because it was really hard for me to, work with actual recipients because I was on that side of it, for so many years. And then I was on the side of the living donor. So I really wanted to focus on being a mentor to living donor, you know, um, participants and really kind of help them and coach them and let them know, hey, I went through this. It was hard. It's not easy. If anybody tells you it's easy, it's not. But what you're doing is going to change your life as well as the person's life you save. So you save a life, but in turn, your life completely changes. And now you've done something that, you know, maybe 1% of the population is going to step up and actually do. And so now you're a hero, even though if you don't want to admit it, you are. Uh, Obviously to the recipient and their families, but also to many, many others that you can influence out there. And so just going through your mentor course and learning more about it and getting more medically um, educated about it was just something that I kind of embraced and became a part of my whole persona. And I was just like obsessed with talking to other living donors and helping them get to the goal line. I always called it kind of like from sports, when you're driving the ball down the field for football, you get down to the 20, but if you don't get to the goal line and score, you haven't, nothing's been accomplished. So I always tried to get people to the 20, and then that was the hardest part to get them the last 20 yards to the goal line and actually get into surgery and do it, because they had a lot of questions and fears and apprehensions and all that.
Can you share a story, somebody who you mentored? And by the way, the mentorship program at the American Transplant Foundation, it's available in 15 languages. So we can find someone who shares your religion, sexual orientation, any cultural sensitivities that you might have. Like we can find someone who really, really understands what you're going through. But as far as your experience as a mentor with 1+1=Life mentorship program, what was that one story that like you will always remember?
Well, there's been several, to be honest, because every one that actually gets to that goal line is like the biggest victory for me at the time, and it's like a huge success. One that I kind of remember pretty well was when I got a call from I can't remember, one of your assistants, and they had an attorney that whose wife was considering being a living donor to her mom, and she had a lot of questions and she wanted to talk to someone, one on one. And so I was able to get in touch with the wife of this attorney who worked there, and she had 4 kids or 3 or 4 kids. So her mom was very, very hesitant about her becoming a living donor because she had said, what if something happens during the operation, and you have some rejection issues yourself, or not rejection, but I mean just
Complications.
yeah, exactly, complications. And so I talked to her and I said, hey, I went through this, and, it's not easy. And she asked me many, many questions. We spoke on the phone at night, and she'd call me and we'd speak during the day when her kids were at school or whatever. And I basically just said, hey, here's the deal. You're going to be doing something that's going to save your mom's life. So in turn, it's going to save your life because your mom remains with you and a grandma to those kids forever. And I said, just make sure you get tested very, very well, and you go through the psychology parts of things, and that your husband's on board 100% too. And at the end of the day, she called me back and said, Steve, I talked to my mom. I convinced her I can do it, and I convinced myself I can do it. So that was the big win for me. She had to convince herself and her mom, to move forward, and her husband, who was very hesitant about, possibly having his wife and mother of his kids have complications. And so that was one of the big wins for me.
Thank you for sharing. And that
Yeah.
family is doing well.
Good, 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 good,
Mm.
good.
And
So
those are like all very valid things to think about of going through this process. And it's good to know that there's someone out there that has been through it and can and show on the other end that you can live a very healthy, very active lifestyle and make it through.
And speaking of active lifestyle, so what happened? Like you had beautiful 5 years, college, fun, and then what happened, Kelsey?
Oh, and then I actually was living in Fort Collins, and then with the circumstances, I moved back home to Boulder, and I was living with my mom. I was just getting sicker, and I was like, it wasn't my body's immune system. It's just, I think it was infections that I was getting. Your immune system so suppressed. I think it was infections, and I was just getting sicker and sicker. And then one day we went into the hospital, and they're like, well, your kidney's not working anymore, so yeah, you have to go back on dialysis. And I was like, oh, this is like that's like one of the worst things to hear. It's like setting you back of like, I have to be hooked up to a machine. My life is gonna significantly change. And it's a really hard thing to imagine, having you had this freedom and this life that you had, and now knowing that this is gonna drastically change everything again. And so it was very hard to comprehend. But like how I am, still very resilient and push through, very survival mode, and push through it. And we figured out the next steps of getting me onto dialysis. And this time, when I went back on dialysis, I did what's called peritoneal dialysis. It's a type of it's home dialysis where you can do it at home. It's a lot gentler on the body, because you do it every night. And so that helped a lot. That gave me freedom. So I didn't have to go into a center and do it in center. I could do it at home. So that gave me more freedom. But still, it's not fun. Not fun at all.
You were probably wondering if you were ever going to get a break.
Right? I realized like now, where I'm at right now, I'm like, there's never really, once you have health problems, it's always going to be part of your life, and you sort of have to roll with it when things happen to you. And so I just take the good when it's good and there's nothing going on. And then when the bad happens, I'll like, okay, well, here we go again. And that doesn't mean it's major bad things. It's like little things of like going in the hospital for a little bit, and because I get real sick or if I come back out. But I just I try to roll with it the best I can. And once I try to get back to as normal of a life as I can when I'm through bad parts of it. So yeah.
We've kind of adopted a saying. I told Kelsey about it: energy and persistence conquer all things. So, I have to have the energy to help her go out and find a living donor, and she has to have the energy to hang on till we get to that next point. And then we both have to have the persistence, to deal with each other, and then also, get into the hospital again and go through it again. So the fourth donor was kind of the one that was the hardest, I thought, because I just thought, oh my gosh, this poor girl, she's been through 3 now. How are we going to go to 4? And I talked to her docs about it, and they said, well, Steve, I said to her doctor, Dr. Wiseman, has anyone ever had 4 transplants at UCH? And he said, well, Steve, no. And I was like, oh boy, now we're going to break the mold. And so we went through the same process again, where I went out and just got her on TV and got her into newspapers. And then luckily, a friend of mine had a connection at a billboard company, and Rocky Mountain Billboards. And they said, hey, I said, can you put Kelsey on a billboard? And with we put together an email with her with ATF. ATF helped us put together an email that would coordinate, and that anybody who might see the billboard could go to that website, I guess it was, or an email. And about, I don't know how much longer, maybe 6 months, 8 months later, we got a call that, there was someone being tested, and darned if he wasn't an incredible match. He saw her billboard driving down from Denver to Monument one day, and on the I-70 or I-25, right? And he was 20 years old, and he was just kind of not lost, but he was just, we needed a direction in his life also, they call it. And he said, hey, I think I can do this. And he went and got tested, and darned if he wasn't a perfect match. And he was a smaller smaller guy with a smaller kidney that fit hers better, I think, than maybe the two male kidneys we had before. And he stepped forward and met Kelsey a week before the actual surgery. And it was, I think, 2 days after he turned 21 years old, he was
Yeah.
in surgery.
Yeah. Actually, it was really cool. The billboard only flashes ads every 10 seconds. So if you imagine driving down I-25 and it's going like 75 miles an hour, because he lived down in that area in Monument, driving up and he saw my name flash in that 10 seconds. And he remembered my name. He remembered Kelsey and Kidney, K and K. And so he looked me up, and that's how he found my story. And that's what going along with felt like he needed to do this. And it was pretty amazing. And I remember getting the call to see Dr. Wiseman at university. And he's like, I have some really good news. Like at first he just called us in because usually when you're on dialysis, the transplant team, for me, at least me, they don't really talk to you as much. They want to get your testing done. But when he called, I'm like, why am I going in for an appointment? I have my testing done. Everything's all done. Like, why am I doing this? And so my mom and I go in, and my Dr. Weisson's like, I have very good news for you. And he's like, we have a kidney. And I'm like, you're joking right now. You're not really serious. Like you're playing a joke. And he's like, no, I'm really serious. So it was pretty amazing. And so then a couple months later, like in February of 2016, is when we had my fourth transplant at university. And that now has been going on for 9 years. So it's 9 years from February. Yeah.
Time flies. Time flies. My child is 9, and I feel that I remember like it was yesterday, and we went hard, right? Like we literally, like I remember talking to Steve, like how hard we're gonna go, and we're like, let's do anything and everything. Let's not leave any stone unturned. Like remember that was the car and kidney for Kelsey and the website, and we were receiving so many calls because we work with news stations. We would just like receive so many calls, like. I knew when they picked your donor, like that was the best possible match. And at that point, there were like so many matches, like people connected with you and your struggle. And I also remember as everything is unfolding and happening, there's so much activity. Steve is planning his wedding. And I'm thinking, wow, so these guys, he has this determination. He's optimistic as they get, right? And remember that, Steve, like your wedding was happening, you're like, I think it was May, right? Like my wedding is on track. And I was like,
right,
look at this guy, look at this confidence, look at these positive vibes. We're like, let's just make it happen, people.
Like I said, we don't quit. We keep pushing.
Especially when you get a living donor to that 20-yard line, then you got to make sure they cross the goal line, right? So that was critical. But he was a great guy. The funny thing is, he had never, not funny, but just incredible thing is he never told his parents about it. He was living with his dad. He never even told his family about it until a week before the surgery. And they said, okay, we're on for next week. And he told his parents. And the first time we met his parents was in the post-op, pre-op and post-op waiting room. And that's when I first met them. And so they were just kind of like, they were almost white faced because they just didn't even know about it until the day or two before.
Very sweet people, very kind.
Yeah. Have you stayed in touch with him?
We did in the yeah. I mean, he moved to another state. He lives in another state now. Actually, he's married and he has a child, which is really great. I'm really happy for him. I mean, we don't stay as close as we did, but when you first especially we were both very young, when you're first like, someone that young is donating to, he just turned 21, we do have that great bond together. But as life happens, we have our lives and we still will check in, but not as frequently as we used to. I'm really happy for him though. We were on actually, it was so funny, him and I, we were on Fox News, like the national Fox News, sharing our story together. It was an amazing, still amazing. It's still, like I said, people, I think every time when I do this or every time I go through something this trivial, seeing people out there and seeing how kind-hearted and giving and how much people want to help, it's the most amazing thing to see, especially with what we see in our world today. just knowing the simple kindness, acts of kindness of like what we see in my story and what I've been through. I have faith in humanity, faith in people that we will be doing great things, and there's always kindness in everywhere we look.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, when we get the third kidney, I thought that third time was a charm, but now I say fourth time forever. Fourth time is not a charm, it's forever now.
Yeah.
Kelsey, and I talk a lot about you. I don't know if your ears are burning, but when patients call us, we're mentoring patients and they say, well, I had two kidneys and they failed and this is the end of the road. Like, I don't feel like I can ask. I said, let me tell you a story. This is how it goes. So now I'm so happy that we will have podcasts and it also will be available on YouTube. We have all these pictures and the story, right? Like we have all these materials. So it will be very, very cool to listen to this episode and also watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Kelsey, can you tell us about what do you do now professionally?
Yeah. So during that time, I got my bachelor's and master's in social work. So I'm a social worker and I work in a dialysis unit. So I help people that are in the same situation as I was in. So I help provide support, resources, anything that I can do to help them either be where they're at, or I also help them get to transplant as well and work with them of getting testing done. So that's what I do this time.
That's really cool that you're able to find something meaningful.
Yeah.
And I just love that what you seem to have pulled out of all these terrible experiences is that people are kind.
Yes.
Like the fact that that's what you're able to hang on to is pretty
I think,
incredible.
yeah, I think it's like I said, it's very beautiful to see what people are capable of doing, and it gives me a lot of hope and reassurance. So as hard as things are in life, it just makes me feel very hopeful as well.
Yeah. I think the key thing and what ATF is doing right now is kind of helping people become aware of all this and what they can do and how they can step up and how they can also become a living donor and support, someone like Kelsey and their families. It's just education and kind of getting them to understand that this is a big step, but it's something they can overcome and they can do and they can become a hero also, like, we've had in our lives over the last 18 years. We've had three other heroes that really stepped up and helped. And hopefully, like we said, fourth time forever. So, Nate's our fourth time.
Yes, I'm hoping this kidney will last another 20 years. I just had my transplant anniversary appointment yesterday with Dr. Wiseman, and he's very happy with me and all my labs. So we're making sure we're staying on track.
Good.
It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So
that's fantastic. And one quick note. So Steve, your surgery was in 2007. So now fast forward 18 years, this surgery, like if you are becoming a living donor tomorrow, next week, your surgery experience, your surgery, your scar, it will all look very, very different versus 18 years ago, because the technology is so much more advanced. There are new technologies like robotic surgery.
Yep.
So there's it's just a much even easier surgery versus back in the days.
Yeah.
Well, they have a way to do a lot more preparation, and the testing is probably, that much better. So you can guarantee a better outcome than unfortunately we had originally. And that's the key thing. You want to make sure a living donor knows that the outcome is going to be great for them, of course, and for their recipient. And that's, a key thing to pass along, that I try to pass along to people I speak to, that, hey, you're gonna be successful. You're gonna win. You're gonna save a life, and it's all going to work out. It's going to take you a month or two to kind of recover, but at the end of the day, your life's going to change, and you're going to be pretty darn happy, like Kelsey is.
Yeah. And there's, like she said, a lot of new technologies. With my job, I have to go and I go to transplant education things over at university, and they talk about robotic surgery and how that all works. And it's really, really fascinating to see and hear about it. So things advance all the time. From 2007 to now. Yeah. Even from 2016.
Well, this is such a fantastic story, and I admire your perseverance, both of you, and your ability to turn this into something positive, or actually lots of positives, not only for you, but for all the other people that you've helped. So thank you so much for sharing the story, both of you.
Of course. I mean, if I can get my story out and help anyone that I can, I don't mind sharing it at all.
Well, greatly appreciate it. So it's been a pleasure talking with you, and thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Amazing.
And I just want to give kudos to the ATF and to Rachel Davis and UCH. They were both just so important to us over so many years. It was just without them, obviously, I couldn't have got over the hurdle myself emotionally and physically. So there was a lot of support there that I got from both the UCH and the docs there and Anastasia and her team. And so now it's just like whenever she calls, the answer is yes. It's always yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
Also have to give a big shout out to my surgeon who is no longer here, Dr. Wax. He was an amazing human being that I love and cherish so much. So I'm so appreciative to him.
Well, thank you for saying that Dr. Wax was your surgeon. I didn't know that, and I never had the privilege of meeting him, but I hear he was an incredible person.
Yes, he really was truly an amazing person. So I'm so fortunate that he graced me with his talents and everything and could be my surgeon. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Every moment matters. Every life matters. And you have the power to give the most precious gift of all. This episode of Transplant Talks is made possible by the incredible people who choose to give the ultimate gift, life. Through the miracle of living kidney and liver donations, they're changing the world, one transplant at a time. Visit AmericanTransplantFoundation.org to learn more about the living donation process and how you can make a difference.